Aaron, our ballots are now available on Tab Room. Hi, judges. The Tab Room wanted me to say, please press start on the ballot. Even though all of us are here, that's a peace of mind and assurance for them.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I just received the notification. I don't know if they had to replace a judge or what.
Yeah, I think you were a replacement.
Oh,
So that's
okay,
fine.
okay. All right. I'm
We're
just
still
gonna.
waiting on a couple other people to get
All right.
here. So we're good.
Hi, judges. Just letting you know that Joy Who and I from Harker. Oh, she's here already. Cool.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Thank you for waiting because it was just like we just got the pairings a few minutes ago. So
Well, we actually have 5 of the 6 people, and then the person who isn't here is marked as a multiple entered. So for all we know, they're somewhere else, and they're fourth anyway. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So if the other judges don't object, I guess we can just get started.
Sure.
Yay. Then we're just going to go down in order. Our first speaker will be Joy Who. So Joy, I'm going to message you your prompts. First, though, is there any way that you would like time signals?
can you tell me when 1 minute 49 is up?
149?
Yes.
Yep. And then when you're speaking, would you like hand signals or are you keeping your own time?
It's okay. I'll be keeping my own time.
Awesome. Then are you ready for me to send you your prompts?
Yes.
Cool. I'm going to send them to you. You're going to get a couple seconds to look it over. I'll tell you when the clock starts.
All
They
right.
should be in your inbox. And I'm pressing start on the timer.
All right.
$149.
Okay. I have heard many of my friends say, once I graduate college, I'm going to be done with school. I'm not going to have to do math anymore. I'm not going to have to study science. I'll be free. Now, even though many of us feel the same way as we're in school and we are constantly forced to learn information every single day, wisdom and learning is a lifelong journey. Albert Einstein tells us wisdom is not a product of but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. Wisdom does not simply stop the moment you graduate college. Instead, one constantly learns more and more things throughout your whole life. Today, I'll be talking about Colonel Sanders, who was able to found a successful business even though he was a late starter. Next, Dumbledore, who never stopped learning even though he was considered to be extremely powerful and wise. And finally, Misty Copeland, who became an amazing ballerina even though in the beginning she was extremely disadvantaged. And so first, let's take a look at Colonel Sanders, who was able to found an extremely successful multi-billion-dollar company, even though before he was simply an orphan. Colonel Sanders was living in and out of shacks and rented places, and he worked in multiple jobs, including in the military, where even then he was fired from. However, even though he was extremely poor, barely finished school, and did not have any knowledge of business, Colonel Sanders understood Albert Einstein's quote. He knew that he wasn't wise yet, but by continuing, he would become a better version of himself. And in the end, he was able to create KFC, the multi-billion-dollar company. And now we see his face on the KFC bucket every time we pick up our crispy fried chicken. Colonel Sanders shows us that even if we start late, or even if we are later to acquire this wisdom, in the end, we will be able to become more and more wise and knowledgeable. Next, let's take a look at Dumbledore, who was already considered to be very powerful and the wisest wizard of his age. Now, we cannot deny that Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series has not made many mistakes. However, throughout all of them, Dumbledore strove to improve himself. Even his dying words, with his amazingly wise and insightful quotes, he admitted that he did not know the best for what was Harry, and he admitted that he knew that some things he did were wrong. Dumbledore shows Albert Einstein's quote, even though Dumbledore was the headmaster of a magic school, even though he was the top in his class, he spent his whole life trying to acquire wisdom until his death. And this is why we know him as one of the wisest book characters and one of the most iconic mentors to this day. And finally, we will be taking a look at Misty Copeland, a Black ballerina who was extremely successful, even though she started as an impoverished youth. Now, Misty Copeland's family was not wealthy or well off like other ballerinas by any means. Though she did well in school, mostly the reason that she became an amazing ballerina was because she spent her whole life trying to gain more wisdom and trying to gain more experience and skills. And now she is part of the ABT Ballet and an inspiration for millions of Black girls, boys, and they-thems all across the world. Now, Misty Copeland really took Albert Einstein's quote into heart because even though she initially was quite successful at ballet, even though she did not have much experience and was not rich by any means, she never stopped working hard. And in the end, that led her to where she was today. And so today, we talked about Albert Einstein's quote, wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. We looked at this through the lens of Colonel Sanders, who even though he was a very late bloomer, was able to found the multi-billion-dollar company of KFC. And next through Dumbledore, who even though he was extremely smart and was considered wise, did not stop seeking wisdom and truth until his dying days. And finally, Misty Copeland, who even though when she was disadvantaged and impoverished, was able to persevere despite her talent. And so, while many of us think that our lifelong journey to learning and wisdom ends with the moment we receive our high school or college diplomas, that is not the case. Life is essentially a large classroom. And in the end, what we should be doing is striving to learn and to become wiser every single living moment of our lives. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I had the time for that as 7:09, somewhere around that overall.
Yeah, that's
That's about what you got.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you everyone for judging, and good luck to everyone else.
Are the other two judges ready for the next person, or you need some time?
Good.
Cool. Then
Would you be able
next up,
to put the prompt in the chat or?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think that it's also at the bottom of your ballot too. There's like a link to a Google Doc, but it's just,
Yeah.
it's easier to paste for me. Okay. Next up, we're going to have our second speaker, Helen.
Hi, can you see and hear me all right?
Yep.
And just
Is
in
there-
advance, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you wanted any way you want time signals. What did you have to say?
So about time signals, is it okay if I just time myself?
That works.
Thank you. And I apologize for any background noise in advance.
You ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. Sending them to you now. I'll give you a second to look over. Time will start when I say it. Time starts.
I'll be beginning in 5 seconds. In 1938, Helen Hulick was a 38-year-old kindergarten teacher. And during this time, women were expected to wear dresses and were frowned upon when they even wore pants. So when Helen Hulick showed up in court one day in pants, she was held in contempt and sentenced to 5-day jail time just for what she wore. But she came back from this humiliation and filed an appeal and won it, winning her and other women the right to wear pants to court whenever they wanted. And while this may seem like a trivial thing, it was the epitome of Helen Hulick being able to learn more, being content not with what she had, but what she will be able to achieve. And this leads me to today's quotation. Humility will teach you knowledge. Arrogance will teach you ignorance. If you think you know it all, you have learned nothing. And this quotation reminds us to keep on pushing the boundaries and never be content with what we already have. And we're going to get this through 3 different examples. First, through Uncle Roger, then through Dirge Kami, and finally through Surya Bond. First, let's take a look at YouTube sensation Uncle Roger. Uncle Roger is this character portrayed by YouTuber Niger, who wanted to expose Western media to Asian culture. So he has become viral on YouTube for making videos critiquing and criticizing chefs like Gordon Ramsay for continuing to butcher Asian dishes. He has gone viral, but the success didn't come easy. He started off as a data scientist with a steady job and income like any Asian parent would want. He wasn't content with where he was. He knew he wanted to do something with comedy, but didn't want to jeopardize his life and his savings in turn. But Uncle Roger, or Niger, was able to realize that life isn't fulfilled until you push the boundaries, until you push for more than you already have. And through this idea, he was able to achieve so much more because he wasn't just content with what he already had. Next, we can explore this idea of moving out of our comfort zone through Dirge Kami, a man who continues to learn even though he's a grandfather. Dirge Kami from India continues to go to high school even though his fellow students are tens of years younger than him. Growing up in rural India, education was not valued, so he had no access to education. So when he finally was in his late 70s, he decided to pursue the education he left out on. And while he does receive criticism for being so old, so much older than his own teachers, Dirge Kami is someone who was able to take learning into his heart, and be able to pursue pushing his own boundaries, moving out of his own comfort zone in order to pursue more than what he originally said. Finally, let's take a look at Surya Bond and how pushing through our comfort zone can also mean pushing back against society for what they impede onto us. In the 1970s and 80s, Surya Bond was a French African-American figure skater who gained much fame for being your not traditional ice princess. You see, figure skaters are centered with gender norms. And female figure skaters were expected to be graceful ice princesses. But that wasn't Surya Bond's style. She pushed for athletic jumps and pushed for harder technicalities. Because of this, she fell out of favor with the judges, especially since she had an iconic but illegal backflip in her programs. But Surya Bond refused to let the low scorings from the judges stop her from being who she was, and portraying this lively and animated style she had when she was on the ice. And Surya Bond is someone who wasn't just content with what she already had, what she already knew. Instead, had that courage to keep on pushing forward. Today's quotation: humility will teach you knowledge. Arrogance will teach you ignorance. If you think you know it all, you have learned nothing. It reminds us to not be content with what we already have, but keep on pushing for what could be. We look at this through 3 different examples. First, through Dirge Kami and how he was able to overcome his past. Then, through Surya Bond and how she was able to push through the standards of skating. And all of this example truly personify that statement. So while pants may not seem like that big of an accomplishment, it's symbolic for women's rights and pushing for equality in the 1900s, showing that when we just take one step in front of another, we'll be able to push for so much more. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a time for that of somewhere around 7:03, 7:02.
Yeah, about the same.
Awesome. Judges ready for the next one? That next one will be Lexi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Is there any way you would like time signals?
4, 3, 2, 1, and 2 minutes for like when prep is up, please.
Okay. Just the 2-minute verbal, not a 30-second or a minute or anything?
Oh, no, I'm timing my prep. I just don't always
Oh.
get it on the same.
That works then. You ready for your prompts?
I am.
Putting them in the chat now.
Okay.
time begins.
Okay, prep time?
Yes.
Okay.
Two minutes have passed.
All right, I'm ready. Can everybody see me? All right. I have a habit of thinking everything through before I do it, or at least trying to. When I have a test, I make diligent plans to study. 30 minutes every day, here's exactly what I'm going to do. But I rarely end up doing it. I don't always think through how I'm going to accomplish the plan. I simply make it. And my inability to plan things through, even when I try, brings me to today's topic. Knowledge is a skyscraper. You can take a shortcut with a fragile foundation of memorization or build slowly upon a steel frame of understanding. So today we are going to look at the complexity of trying to do too much too fast without thinking, or thinking too much and never accomplishing anything through 3 points. First, the children's book Matilda. Second, the musical Something Rotten. And third, the true story of Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. My first point is what happens when we build the perfect amount of understanding, when we know what needs to be done. It is the children's book Matilda. We often say that children have a clearer sense of right and wrong than adults, and Matilda proves this well. Her parents are horribly abusive and do not believe that she is worthy of existing. And they try to tear up her books when she would rather read than watch television like the rest of them. Her principal, the Trenchbull, is no better. But Matilda observes all of them, their habits, what they do, and what needs to be done to make them better and to serve justice. Her father is an incredibly slimy businessman who sells used cars. And so she pranks his used cars so that people know what they're getting themselves into instead of being able to be tricked by them. And she helps the Trenchbull's niece, her teacher, get a fair deal of her salary and her house. Matilda built a steel frame of understanding. She knew what she had to do, and she did it without dithering and overthinking. However, what happens when we do overthink what needs to be done? When we spend so long building that steel frame that the skyscraper never gets completed? This brings me to my second point, the musical Something Rotten. Our main character, a Renaissance playwright named Nick Bottom, begins the play by hitting rock bottom. He is trying to write his next great hit, but he's constantly overshadowed by William Shakespeare. He knows he needs to do something, so he pays a less than credible soothsayer to tell him what Shakespeare's next biggest play is going to be so that he can write it first. However, the soothsayer tells him that Shakespeare's greatest play will be a musical about eggs, Omelette. And Nick Bottom sets off to writing Omelette. But his family, his brother especially, bring up doubts. Do you think anyone's going to watch a musical about eggs? Probably not. And then Nick Bottom becomes consumed by doubt. He puts on the play. It fails, obviously. But he is unsure of what to do next. He is trying to build too much of a steel frame of what audiences want and what they will listen to. And so he is unable to move forward and build that skyscraper. But what happens when we don't bother with the steel frame? We try to build a skyscraper out of toothpicks. This brings me to my third and final point. However, it's more of a cautionary tale, the story of Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. These two progress slowly from friends to frenemies to outright enemies over the course of their lives. And when Alexander Hamilton tells everyone not to vote for Aaron Burr, instead endorsing his lifelong enemy, Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Burr is, rightfully so, completely outraged. And he challenges him to a duel. And instead of trying to build a frame of understanding of what the other may be thinking, what their motivations might be, maybe we shouldn't kill each other, they skip this step. They go straight to a duel. They try to scale a skyscraper that they have no knowledge of, and Alexander Hamilton dies. So, in conclusion, knowledge is a skyscraper. You can take a shortcut with a fragile foundation of memorization, or build slowly upon a steel frame of memorization by Naval Ravikant. And we have seen this and the cautionary tales along with it through Matilda, Something Rotten, and Hamilton. I try my best to plan my way through life, but that is not always the best way to live. Sometimes we miss out on the most important things. Thank you. Was I still within grace period?
Yep, I had 7:05 as the overall time.
All right, thank you.
Nice work. I think I saw the person who was double entered come and leave. So that's unfortunate, but they'll come back eventually, I suppose. So do we have Samuel? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome.
So just to clarify, I do have 20 seconds to read the quotes before the prep time actually begins, correct?
I don't, sure. That's not what I've been doing for everybody else, unless that's a tournament rule, but I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I believe.
It was given to other contestants in other rounds.
Yeah, it's in the
Okay.
tournament.
Okay, I've been giving everybody a little bit of time, but I wasn't like keeping a timer exactly on 20 seconds. So you will get a brief period between seeing the prompts and timer starting.
All right.
I'm about to paste them now.
All right. I choose the first quotation by William Shakespeare.
Starting the timer now.
All right, can all judges hear and see me properly? All right, excellent. When I entered into middle school, I thought I knew what was going to happen. I would make lots of friends. It would just be an overall nice community. Now, I'm not saying that that hasn't happened, but my ignorance going into middle school cost me a lot, as I was this charismatic guy trying to make friends. Now, the very essence of this story is reflected in my quotation today. Ignorance is the curse of God. Knowledge is the wing wherewith we fly to heaven, put bluntly by William Shakespeare. Now, what I believe he is trying to tell all of us today is that when we are ignorant of information, we shouldn't be so quick to conclusions and make our decisions with that ignorance. Instead, we have to use our knowledge to make the best decisions therefore. However, that's not what our society does today. Sometimes we are ignorant of certain things. We think that we know everything, when in reality, we know nothing. Today, we'll be looking at this through 3 different examples. Firstly, through investors, and then a military class plane, before finally looking at somebody who was trying to interpret ignorance and knowledge. First off, we'll be looking at investors during the internet bubble. Now, Warren Buffett is known as the Oracle of Omaha, and an oracle is known to be something of God. Herewith, it's something that would provide you a trip to heaven. Now, it's just not really realistic that you would be from heaven, but with the luck, money, and knowledge that Warren Buffett has, it's safe to say that he knows something that we don't. This can be seen through the internet bubble crash. Now, during 1998, internet companies like Pets.com, Amazon.com were popping all around, and new investors were spending all of their life savings on these new technology stocks. But what they didn't realize was that these stocks weren't actually of value and weren't making any profits, but they were ignorant of this and decided to just waste all of their spendings. But on the other hand, Warren Buffett, the man who knew something that other people didn't, the Oracle of Omaha, realized and had the knowledge and decided to have his discipline and not invest in those companies. And because of that, he ended up getting the better of the deal. When the internet bubble crashed in 2000, thousands of investors lost billions of dollars because of their ignorance. Next off, we'll be looking at the American military and be seeing how their ignorance cost them billions of dollars. Now, the B-2 bomber was seen as one of the best bombers the world has ever seen, known for their stealth and extreme features. Now, the B-2 bomber, when the 22nd was made, the American military didn't decide to do the standard protocol safety checks. And because they failed to do this on the very first test flight, the B-2 bomber exploded and $1.4 billion was thrown into the fire. Now, the American military thought that they knew what was going on, thought that they knew how to build a B-2 bomber, but in reality, they didn't. And that ignorance was the curse of God, where they ended up losing on billions of dollars and taxpayer funds. Now, last and finally, we'll be looking at the famous Photo 51 and making the difference between ignorance and knowledge. Now, you may know the winners of the Nobel Prize, James Watson and Francis Crick. And the reason they were able to win the prize was because they made the famous discovery of the structure of DNA, which is the foundation for 21st century life science. But what they had, and what Rosalind Franklin, the person who actually discovered Photo 51, that didn't have was the actual ability to use the knowledge. Rosalind Franklin had Photo 51 in her hands. She was the one that made that discovery, but she was ignorant of its true knowledge. She could not interpret it. And because of that, that was her curse. And she ended up not winning the Nobel Prize and getting as much credit as she could have because of it. Today, we looked at William Shakespeare's quotation, where he puts it quite bluntly: ignorance is the curse of God. Knowledge is the wing wherewith we fly to heaven. I absolutely agree with this quotation, and I proved it correct through 3 different examples. Firstly, we realize the importance of always maintaining our cool head, looking at our knowledge and not being ignorant of facts, We saw this through Warren Buffett and how he was the Oracle of Omaha and, unlike others, didn't lose out on the internet bubble. And then we looked at the B-2 bomber and Rosalind Franklin, and we've realized the importance of not being ignorant of these things. So today, I urge you, whenever you're trying to make a decision, always use knowledge and don't be ignorant. Thank you.
Awesome. And I had the time for there as a 7:20. Next up, do we have Mira here? Awesome.
Yes,
While I'm
here.
getting your prompts ready, is there any way you would like time signals or verbals or anything?
No, I'm good, but quick question. Does prep time start after I choose the topic, or it starts like right after you paste them in the chat?
I'm going to paste them and I'm going to give you a little bit to look them over. And then if you select it before, that's good, but it's really just, that's how it's going to go. Yeah. So I'll say time starts when time starts, if that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, is
then-
it 7 minutes running or 2-5?
It's 7. I've been doing it 7 minutes running, but it's whatever you're comfortable with. Everyone's usually been prepping for 2.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Then I will send them to you now.
Okay, I'll just start the timer now. Okay, I'll start in about 5 seconds. When I was 7 years old, I wanted to become an animal activist. Yeah, I knew almost everything about almost every type of animal. In my free time, I would do research upon it. But one day when me and my family were in India and I saw the grossest slimy green blue icky bug on the ground, I didn't do anything about it. The worst part was that there was a car heading right for it. And instead of saving that gross bug, I just waited for the sound of the smush. And it's this idea of valuing knowledge over wisdom that can be seen to today's topic. Knowledge is power, but only wisdom is liberty, by Will Durant. And what I believe this quote means is that we may know everything about everything, but the only thing that really matters is that if we're wise enough to do the right thing. But too often in our society, we tend to value knowledge more than wisdom. And instead of focusing on what we should do, we just try to gain more and more knowledge. So In today's speech, we'll first examine why it is we're so stuck up about intelligence. Then we'll examine the effects of not choosing the right thing and using your wisdom properly, before finally looking at a solution of how we can all tend to do the right thing despite the odds. So what is the cause of just leaning towards knowledge instead of wisdom? Well, this can be seen through the notion of competition. Competition, yes, competition. Now, as we're always thinking who's going to get into the Ivy League college and who's going to get into some crappy one, who in the end is going to get a good job and who is going to fail, we just think who has more knowledge is going to be the winner. But in the end, knowledge does not only come from winning, and winning does not only come from knowledge, but in reality, the true winner is the one with wisdom. But what happens when we fail to realize this notion, and too often we rely on our knowledge instead of our wisdom? We can see the devastating effects of the Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding scandal, a story about two USA figure skaters who both wanted to go to the Olympics, Nancy and Tonya. Now, as Tonya was realizing sooner or later that Nancy might actually beat her, instead of relying on her wisdom and doing the right thing, she only wanted to be the best figure skater. So she hired her husband to come running behind Nancy with a pole and bang her in the legs. No one was sure if Nancy would be able to compete, but luckily she recovered in time and was able to win second for the United States, while Tonya won eighth and was put in jail. Tonya was so focused on getting the knowledge of being the best figure skater that she didn't realize to use her wisdom to do the right thing. In that case, it was winning her way to the gold, not just cheating to get it. But finally, we can look up to a 16-year-old boy to know how to use your wisdom and do the right thing despite your age and despite the odds. Let's look at Jamie Harrington, a 16-year-old boy who lived in Dublin. Jamie Harrington was going to 7-Eleven to get some Gatorade when all of a sudden he saw an old man dangling his legs off a bridge as if he was contemplating whether or not to jump off. Every other stranger was just walking by this poor man, but Jamie decided to kneel down, use his wisdom, and ask the man if he was okay. It turns out that man was about to commit suicide, but once he realized that someone out there actually cared for him, he prevented himself from doing so. Jamie Harrington was able to save a life simply because instead of using his knowledge like too many of us currently do, he used his wisdom to do the right thing. And in the end, he felt much better and was able to make another stranger feel as good. So today, when I received the topic, knowledge is power, but only wisdom is liberty by Will Durant, it's clear that we need to stop focusing on gaining knowledge and instead look at our wisdom to do the right thing. We looked at the cause of why we too heavily focus on knowledge through competition. Then we looked at the devastating effects of the Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding scandal before looking at a solution of how we can all come together to start using our wisdom for the better. So I feel terrible about that slimy green gross bug. But now I know that maybe animals isn't my field. However, I challenge all of you, whether you're in a situation like me, Jamie Harrington, or even Tonya Harding, always choose wisdom over knowledge. Thank you.
Cool. And I had that one as 658. So now finally, we will have Pavitra. Is there any specific way you would like time signals?
I would just appreciate it if you could tell me 150, if that's okay. Cool. Awesome. Let me just get a timer from my end.
And you'll be keeping your own during like speaking, you won't need hand signals?
No. But just at the last 10 seconds, just to make sure we're aligned, could someone give me signals for that too?
I'll try that. Yeah, like counting like that.
Awesome.
Cool. Then I'm about to paste your things in the chat. I'll give you a couple seconds to read. I'll tell you when time begins.
Awesome. Thank you.
time begins. $150.
Awesome. I just want to make sure all of you can hear and see me okay. Awesome. So the first time I was told that I was bossy, guess what? I was 5, I was on the preschool playground, and I was telling one of the boys that he tagged me unfairly. Okay, granted, I didn't actually want to be it, because then I'd have to go chase people around, and we all know that running the mile wasn't my thing, okay? 10-minute mile time. No, I wanted to make sure that I was far away from this whole tag situation. And the best thing I could think of at the time was yelling at him to not hit me. So, of course, I was a little bit bossy as a 5-year-old, and I was told a lot by my teachers to be quiet, settle down, stop the enthusiasm, don't speak so much. And I felt like constrained in a box, and for a 5-year-old to process all of those different feelings, you could bet that using my words and then being told not to felt humiliating, embarrassing, and kind of ironic. So when given the topic today of the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing, I disagree. Because in a world that tells us to completely abide by the growth mindset, I believe that we should approach that by saying the only true wisdom in this world is knowing that you know nothing yet. So today, let's explore this idea of confining ourselves into one single box by telling ourselves that we need to be humble in the name of, being good people. By first taking a look at 3 different female entrepreneurs who have proved this otherwise. By first taking that big leap of faith with yet. First, let's look at the CEO of Canva, Melanie Perkins. Next, let's talk a little bit more about Anna Huffington, the CEO of the Huffington Post. And finally, Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube. First, let's start by talking a little bit more about Melanie Perkins, the CEO of Canva. Now, Melanie's story is that of a Filipino-Australian woman from Perth, Australia, coming together with her husband to create a company built on the creativity, providing access to different kinds of resources in a technology-driven world so that students, teachers, collaborators can all work on a single forum for expressing themselves and their ideas. Now, I've personally used Canva in every single one of my health projects because if there's one thing that I love doing, talking about nutrition and sugar with aesthetics makes everything more fun. And you can bet that being one for the aesthetics and one who loves to talk a lot, I give the best presentations, hands down. So maybe the best wisdom is knowing that I know nothing yet. But what I do know is that aesthetics is the way to go. So thank you, Melanie Perkins, for that lesson. Next, let's talk a little bit more about Anna Huffington of the Huffington Post. Now, what I really appreciate from Anna's story is that she created her own company and founded a news source that was apparently reported by 35% of Americans, as according to a Pew Research poll in 2019, is considered a good source. Now, I personally don't think the Huffington Post would be my choice for an extemp round. It's a little too liberal for my taste. But one of the things Ariana Huffington has taught me is that Arianas, with all named Arianas, are pretty cool people. Shout out to Ariana Grande. But also that when it comes to sourcing information, one of the biggest and most humble things is understanding that we know nothing yet, but there's an opportunity to learn something more. So even if she has a liberal news site that I might not use for a news source, it's something that I can take a lesson from. And I'm very thankful to her for teaching me that. Finally, I'd like to bring our attention to Susan Wojcicki, and she's the CEO of YouTube. Now, YouTube is ubiquitous in all of our homes, and for a woman with a net worth of $815 million, my apologies, who had the CEOs of Google started in her garage, I'd say that she's taught me a lot about what it means to take education and apply that growth mindset of yet. I mean, I don't know of a single more female entrepreneur who's taught me the value of conjunctions. Well, when it comes to Susan Wojcicki, that I really find so inspiring is this idea of pursuing knowledge with the intent of learning it and becoming better at it. This is a woman who graduated from Harvard with honors and wanted to pursue a PhD, but instead decided that she would move into tech. This was a woman who thought of CS before it was even a big thing. And for that, I am most grateful. These female entrepreneurs have taught me a lot, and it's this importance of yet that I believe is truly meaningful. Thank you so much, judges. I hope all of you have a great day. Thank you for judging.
Thank you, everybody. I had the time there is 7:04. I do believe that is the round. So thanks to all the competitors. Thanks to the live streamer. Thanks to Aaron and Josephine, the judges. Good job, everyone. Congrats on
Good job,
finals.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for judging.
Nice work on finals.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, judges. Bye. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.